Reilly Smith, Capo Caco, Jacob Trouba, Stanley Cup aspirations, fantasy hockey, and much, much more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1152 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. So I want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And that song you're hearing at the intro is, of course, Leave the Lights On from our good friends in Passafire. You can check those guys out anywhere you get your music. So, very special episode today of Locked On New York Rangers. In just a minute here, we're going to be welcoming our special guest for the day from Melbourne, Australia, Mr. Ryan Sharkey. Ryan is kind enough to participate in the Locked On New York Rangers Fantasy League every year, and he finished last year as the runner-up of the 20-team league. I think he's got a heck of a team this year as well, but we'll be talking about that and pretty much all things New York Rangers with Ryan Sharkey right here and right now. All right, so with no further ado, let's go ahead and welcome our very special guest for today's show, the runner-up in last year's Locked On New York Rangers Fantasy League, all the way from Melbourne, Australia, in the future over there, Mr. Ryan Sharkey. And Ryan, first of all, man, welcome to the show. Thanks for doing this. Congratulations on your runner-up finish last year. And we were talking a little bit about this before I hit record here, but it's obviously a unique fantasy league. We got 20 teams in it. You know, players go flying off the boards. And do you go into it with any kind of a strategy, or are you just kind of winging it the way that I typically do?
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. I'm rapt to be on the show. I listen to it every day, as I mentioned to you. No, I actually had a bit of a strategy this year. In the past, I've sort of just gone in and winged it and see how it went and tried to get the best team I could. But this year was a bit different. I'd done a few of the practice drafts, and I thought I really want to have a strategy going in. And the strategy just went completely out the window because we got into it and there was a really early goalie rush, and that's threw my strategy a little bit too. Early on, I just wanted to take the best player that was available, and then, I looked at on the board and Breadman was there at 9, and I thought, I've got to take him. And so from there, my strategy just went out the window, and it was like, all right, let's see if we can make a really good team here, and I think I did okay.
Yeah, I think you got a great team. And I will say, Ryan, I was shocked that in a league full of nothing but Ranger fans, or I assume we've got 20 Ranger fans, that Panarin was still there at number 9. I mean, did you expect that? Were you kind of keeping your fingers crossed that he would be there and he would be your pick if he fell to number 9 there?
Always. If I could take Breadman, or if I could take Mika, or even Shesty. Shesty went a bit early for me. But to be able to get Brett at 9, I thought was an absolute steal, because the players that were higher than him that were still available, they didn't have anywhere near as many points as he did last year. So I thought, I can't not take him. That would just be ridiculous. So it was an easy win. I'll take that one.
It really is fun watching that in this league, how all the Rangers go very early. And then you've got players that Ranger fans don't like Crosby's hanging around, and I ended up with Ovechkin. He was hanging around. He was still there in the 3rd round, and I felt like I had to make my move there. But it's just kind of an interesting dynamic there for sure. The other thing that I love, it comes back to you in the 2nd round, and you're making your 2nd pick, and you pick up none other than Vincent Trocheck at number 32 overall. So you got to make a move for Lafreniere at this point. I think you got to make that trade happen. But, man, I mean, were you hoping, once you got Panarin, was it like, okay, maybe Trocheck's going to be there? Or were you surprised that he was there? Just kind of take me through your thought process with that pick there in the 2nd round.
More surprised than anything else. I thought, like you said earlier, I thought as soon as being in a Ranger league, I thought these guys are all going to fly off the board early. I think the last year that we had it, they all went very quickly, and it was like, okay, let's forget about that strategy. But this year it was great. And as soon as I saw Troch that was available there, it was like, I can't not. And like you said, I thought, is there any chance I could get Laffy and then let's make the line happen? But sadly that wasn't to be. But I couldn't not take Troach as well. So and again, I've sort of learned over the years playing that you just have to look across the stats a little bit deeper and try and see where they can help you out. And I thought Troach and his ability at that center position was just too much not to take.
Yeah, very well-rounded player. Somebody that, I mean, he's a fantastic player in general, but he's a great player for a league like this because he really does give you a little bit of everything. And speaking of that, we also, one more Ranger, you ended up taking Trouba in the 5th round. Now, I thought that was I thought that was a little early at first, but then I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, well, he gets a ton of hits. He gets a ton of block shots. We added that this year, block shots. So feeling good about Trouba, kind of a crazy offseason for him, but he's on your fantasy team, and he's still the captain of the Rangers. So feeling good about Trouba?
Yeah, it was a roll of the dice, I'll be honest. When I looked at the list at that point, the only strategy that I could come up with for D-men, and I noticed you had the same issue when you were looking at your D-men as well.
They're bad.
Like, who do I take? And then I started to look across, and I thought, all right, I want to see, those 3 columns, those hits, the blocks, etc. I want to see over 100, 150 of those, and I'll take a chance on them. I wasn't looking for, the assists and the shots. The assists and the goals from the D-men at that stage. They were all the high point scorers that way were all taken by then. So I thought, I know that Trouba, his hits are unbelievable. I know that he blocks a ton of shots, like you said, and I thought I've just got to roll the dice. So I went with him, and I thought, let's see how he goes. He's got a point to prove this year.
That's absolutely true. And I'm going to ask you a little bit more about Trouba and your take on everything that happened with him a little bit later in the show for sure. One or two more questions about fantasy, though. This was interesting to me, too. So you took a Ranger in the 1st, 2nd, and 5th round, but in the 3rd and 4th rounds, you didn't play favorites. You went out, you got a couple of Devils, Jacob Markstrom in round 3, Nico Hischier in round 4. So, I mean, are you conflicted there? You got to root for these guys a little bit now. What's that like for you?
No, I'll take their points, but there'll be no rooting for them. The Jacob Markstrom pick was the goalie rush that happened that just snowballed when we were looking at and if I use any Australian metaphors or analogies, I apologize. But
we want those. We want those.
I saw the goalie rush happening, and all the ones that I prioritized were all gone. And so I thought, I've got to get in. I really wanted one good goalie and then a backup that I knew I could interchange if needed. Last year I had a lot of success with that. But this year I just saw him fly off the board, and I thought, if I miss out here, I'm in trouble, knowing how many categories and statistics there are for goalies. So I thought, we've got to give him a chance. So I had to. He was the sort of next best, I think, at that stage for me. But in terms of Nico Hischier, I had him last year, and he had a bit of an interrupted season as well, and that made it pretty tricky. So I thought, he still had quite a number of points last year, given the interruptions that he had. So I thought, let's give him another shot. He was the highest point scorer at that stage, so I was playing a little bit of stats, numbers, etc., and just thinking, I've got to give him a shot.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I really like your team this year, Ryan. I think you're going to be certainly in the mix for it again this season as far as making a deep playoff run, potentially even winning it all. I figure we will shift our attention to the Rangers. We'll talk about their offseason, everything that's, forthcoming. We're only a week away from the start of the regular season, and we'll get to all that fun stuff in just a second here with Mr. Ryan Sharkey. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. All right, so we'll keep everything rolling here with Mr. Ryan Sharkey. Thank you again, Ryan, for joining the show here. For the everydayers, definitely stick around. Going to be breaking down everything that happens between the Rangers and the Islanders, the preseason finale on Friday night. That will likely be our next episode. But for right now, Ryan, we got to talk some Ranger hockey here, man. Definitely an interesting offseason for sure. Barclay Goodrow moves on, and you think they might retool the team a little bit. And really the only big move that they brought in was Reilly Smith. But first of all, man, just a very general question. How excited are you for some Ranger hockey this year after they got as close as they did last year, 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup final there?
Yeah, absolutely. I just cannot wait for, under a week now. And we'll open up things. It's the most exciting time of the year, like over here in Australia with Aussie rules football finishing. And it's almost like we transition, for me anyway, into hockey season. And I just honestly can't wait for things to kick off. I thought over the preseason, like you've said on many episodes, that we were almost waiting. What's the move that could come? What could be the big transaction? And with those things not really happening, we know that the Rangers have loved Reilly Smith over the years, and seeing that just happen, it was sort of like, okay, finally they've got their shot with him. Let's see if he can make things work on that top line, which I think is a hard gig for whoever goes into that role, because, you've got two guys there that are so tight knit and best mates, obviously. And, you've now got to ask someone to come in and be that third wheel, but fit really seamlessly. So I think it's a tough ask, but from everything that I've heard in the media and from yourself and things like that, he's gone in and gone about it really well in terms of trying to make things gel, and he's asking lots of questions, and he's trying to say to the guys, I want to be a part of this. And it sounds like he's doing everything he can. And I've really liked some of the teamwork that I've seen between them. There was, I think, might have been game 2 or 3 of this series. There was a really nice tic-tac-toe play between the three of them that was just awesome. And I'm like, yes, I want to see more of that, because that would be really exciting to see. So, in answering your question, I just can't wait. It's I actually just want the preseason to end. I don't want to see any more injuries.
Yes.
I don't want to see any more issues happening. Let's just end the preseason, get into the real deal.
Yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed that Artemi Panarin is okay, and that guys like Ryan Lindgren and Jimmy Vesey, they're not going to be there at the start, but hopefully they can get back sooner rather than later. We shall see. We talked about Jacob Trouba a little bit as it pertains to your fantasy team, but as far as real, actual NHL hockey with Jacob Trouba, obviously a crazy offseason. There were those rumors that they were going to move on from him in one way or another. Rumors that he might be getting traded to Detroit. So I just want to get your take on that, because he's a player that's really kind of split the fan base. There's people that don't like him at all, and then there's people that love the blue collar, old school kind of throwback player that he is. So would you have preferred them to move on and go in a different direction, or are you still kind of on Team Trouba and you're happy that he's back as the captain? Very curious to get your take on that.
It's a really tough question, because at this sort of stage, I'm sort of like, okay, we just got to put all that stuff behind us now. Like, he is the captain. He's going to take the ice. We know that he's going to put his body on the line. The guy played with a broken ankle last year, so we know what he's capable of and what he's going to do. So I'm still, he's part of the team. So for me now, it's like, let's move on. Let's get into it. We know what he's going to offer. Yeah, it's a big cap hit, $8+ million. It's a big cap hit, but at the same time, it's not going to change things now. So for me, it's about, all right, let's move forward. Let's go. We know what he's going to offer. We know that he's going to put his heart and soul on the line. And I think too, he's got a point to prove. He's got to get out there and show this fan base, well, I'm here and I wanted to be here and I committed to being here. So I've got to prove a point. I've got to get out there and play my heart out and show you guys that I was worth keeping. So I'm sort of on the team of let's get going. I think he always offers, whether it's the hits, whether it's walking that fine line between, stepping over and taking someone out if we need to, or stepping up for someone. But at the same time, I think he's going to be a really good voice in the room for guys like Victor Mancini who's coming in and things like that, just to show them how to do it. So in that sense, I'm okay with it. I'm sort of like, let's get going with him.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page. When the offseason was unfolding, I was okay with them, moving on in one way or another. But once it didn't happen, and once, all those big free agents kind of came and went, it's kind of like, all right, well, at this point, there's no purpose to trading him or buying him out or any of those things. So we might as well just move on. And, a lot of people, including myself, we've all said some things about Trouba and, certain, ways that he's played in the past, certainly in this postseason run. But the one thing that I don't think has been in question, and you can let me know if you agree with me on this, Ryan, but his leadership. I mean, I do certainly think that he's a very important voice in that locker room. Would you tend to agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that's something you can't buy is the leadership and obviously the respect that he has with the players. You only have to think back a couple of years to the infamous throw the helmet on the ice and the players saying, all right, we've got to lift, and they did. So with a couple of the young players coming through, especially on D as well, I think he's really going to be invaluable for those guys and helping them move forward and showing them the way. And that's an invaluable thing that you can't really put a price on.
Absolutely. Something else I wanted to do here, we're doing in the future, not too long from now, we're going to have this special episode where, all the listeners of the show, they share stories from this last year's playoff run for the Rangers, what they were doing, who they were with, how they reacted for any of the playoff overtime wins that the Rangers got from this last run. But you're here with us right here, right now, Ryan. So do you have like a funny story or like anything that you can remember from any of those playoff runs that or the playoff wins that the Rangers had during their run there?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting over here, John, because the games are usually played at sort of 10 a.m., 11 a.m. our time. And so basically I have to avoid all social media. I have to avoid all platforms so that I don't see a score or any notifications on phones or watches or anything like that. Because basically playing every second day, I just sort of have to hold out for the rest of the day to get home to watch it. Because for me, that's as close to live as I can get. But in terms of the stories around those, you can't forget Brett and his winner. And I mean, for us, because some of the games go so late too, I remember a triple overtime that we had. I don't think it was last year, it was the year before, I believe. But my wife and I are still sitting up at 1, 2 a.m. because we can't go away from the screen. We've got to sit there and watch it. And my kids as well, the whole family of Ranger supporters, and they're sort of like angry because they've got to go to bed, and we're like, no, we can't keep you up this late. But for us, it's we have to stay up, because if we stop, we're going to find out the next day, and it's like I can't not watch it before I go to bed. So you can get to really ridiculous hours in the morning, John, before I end up going to bed, especially in an OT game or a triple as we had back then.
Oh, I'm sure. And those playoff overtime games are no joke. They could be over in 10 seconds or it could go all night. And we're all kind of in this thing together, staying up late past midnight, past 1 a.m., trying to find out if the Rangers are going to win. I think the game you're talking about, it rings a bell. I want to say it was game 1 against Pittsburgh, which the Rangers unfortunately lost. But then they obviously had the last laugh in that series. So that was a good time for sure.
Yeah, that's a heartbreaker too, when you stay up till – you've got triple overtime and next thing they lose and you're like, wow, I've just stayed up until 2 a.m. Come on.
Just to watch that, right?
Exactly.
That's always a gut punch there for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to talk, we touched on Reilly Smith a little bit earlier. I want to get your thoughts on that acquisition, take it a step further here and ask you a couple other questions. We'll do some season predictions as well and just continue to have fun talking Ranger hockey here on Locked On New York Rangers. All right, talking here with Ryan Sharkey. So Ryan, we talked about Reilly Smith a little bit. Is this finally the dude? Like, is he going to fit in there with Mika and Kreider? Are we finally going to have, the end of the revolving door, as I like to call it, at top line right wing there? Are you hopeful for that?
Yeah, I really am. Like I said, I think it's really challenging for someone to come in. We've had the revolving door, as you mentioned, but you've got two guys who are exceptionally tight, and trying to fit in with Mika and Kreider is obviously going to be a really big challenge for anyone trying to step up there. We've had Kako, who I really wanted to be successful up there, and he's had a couple of chances and hasn't been able to. And he's a guy, hopefully we get to chat about too, because, I'd love to see him really kick off this year. But I think in terms of Reilly Smith, I think like I said, the teamwork and the noise coming out of New York at the moment that we get over here anyway, from guys like Vince and people like that, he's on the precipice where you can see he's making the effort to put himself out there and to be a part of it and to let the guys know that, I'm part of this team and I want to be part of this team. But I know that you've said on the podcast a few times about, it could be a one and done for him. And I really hope that he can solidify a spot there, because having Mika and Kreider be so tight is such a tricky thing to keep putting new players through there. And then, having to start again the next year. So obviously it'll come down to cap space and things like that. So I think that's going to be a big challenge to manage that, obviously, with who we've got to secure over the next couple of years. But if he can put his best foot forward and join them and be a really strong top line or second line, however you want to look at it, that would be fantastic. I think there's a shot there. The Rangers have loved him for, I think, 3 or 4 years. They've really wanted him and finally got him. So now hopefully he can really do that job and put a few points on the board.
Yeah, it's crazy the way that he finally ended up getting here, because he was on Vegas for all those years. He wins the Stanley Cup there, and you know how Vegas is with their salary cap circumvention and using the LTIR in some interesting ways, shall we say, and never able to do a deal with them. But then he's with the Penguins for 1 year, and yet you strike a deal with your division rivals. So I guess better late than never. They got the guy they always wanted to get. But, you mentioned Kakko a second ago, so we could certainly talk about him. I thought he looked great in this most recent preseason game, scored a goal, hit the crossbar in another situation. I feel like, a career best season for him is certainly within reach this year. But how do you feel about Kakko? Looks like he might be entering the season with his old kid line mate, Philip Hedl, and likely Will Cooley as well. So just your thoughts on Kakko and how he might end up doing this year.
Yeah, he's a guy, like, obviously number 2 draft pick, and you just want to see him take the reins and make the most of his opportunities. And I know he's had last year, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, there might have been an injury earlier in the season for him too. And I think that made life really tricky for him. But you can see there are glimpses that just come through every now and then where he'll take off down the wing and he'll rifle that shot. He's got a really wicked shot when he lets it go. And I really would love to see him, really take the game on, because when he does, you can see that the skills and the opportunities will come. But it's just, I guess, sometimes you never know what's going on in the mind of young kids like that. And hopefully he can back himself. I see in the media, you see sometimes it looks like he's always getting asked that question about when's it going to come? When's it going to come? And that must get pretty draining on a young kid like that. So I really hope the best for him, because I think if he can take off a little bit like Laffy did last year, they really said that we're going to invest in Laffy that way. And I guess they tried it with Capo on the top line, but they really invested in Laffy and said, we're going to put you there with Panarin and you can have the bump and all that sort of stuff. And that worked wonders for him. But I really hope that Capo can, with Philip Hedl, with Cooley on that third line, I hope they can gel and find that, I guess, the chemistry that you need for him to be successful. Because, it's an investment like that, you just want him to be successful. And I think he really has the opportunity to do it this year. I just hope he can make the most of it, because I see he's got a lot of upside, and I just hope he can really get in there and make the most of that.
Absolutely. Couple other young Rangers that are making some noise this offseason. I've been really high on both of them and, everything that we've seen from them in the preseason. But you've got Adam Edstrom, Victor Mancini. I mean, at this point, I'm thinking like it would almost be an upset if they don't make the team, especially Edstrom. But what do you think, man? Are these guys going to be out there on opening night, and are you excited to see them, in action for this team?
Yeah, I actually think given the injury situation, and that's why I just want these preseason games over. But given that injury situation, I think, and Edstrom's performance in the rookie series and then obviously into the preseason, you can't ask for someone to do more than that. I was actually hoping that Brennan Othmann would take that next step too. He was one that I was really hopeful of, because another guy with a wicked wrister and Very physical. I really like his physical play as well. And I've sort of been on his bandwagon a little bit where I thought this could be the time where he goes. I know he's young. He's still got time, but I thought this could be an opportunity for him to slot in there. But hopefully he can – I think he'll end up down at Hartford and playing there for a little while and just working on the game side of things a little bit. But in terms of who'll make it, I really think Edstrom's locked in now. Like you said, I can't see him not playing. And the other one in terms of defense with Victor Mancini, the fact that I think you said it the other day, he's slightly taller, slightly bigger than say a Trouba, and he plays big and he plays confident, and he sort of has that Rempy, that carefree nature that you see on the ice. But I think in the latest episode that you mentioned about his smarts and a couple of little plays that he made that were really clever in terms of getting the puck back on when they needed that transition time and things like that. And I thought this guy's really got some good hockey IQ going on. So I think he's a lock. Although maybe Connor Mackey, because I know they really like him and his physical play too.
Yep.
So I sort of thought they're sort of, to me, jostling it out for another spot there. But it's a shame that guys like Robertson's been injured and that sort of stuff, because he could have been another one to see what he's got. Big guy, 6'4", that he would be really great to see too. But I think Mackey and Mancini, I think Mancini's got the marks over Mackey at the moment. You can see that they really like him. I think he played 25 minutes the other night, which is huge for a guy his age, and they clearly trust him on the ice, so that's fantastic. But there's a lot to like about these kids coming through. You can see that they've been put in that development area and now given the opportunity, and they've come in and they're carefree in their nature, like that sort of childish or I guess a childish charm that Rempy's got, which is, I'm just going to get out there and have a go.
Right.
and you can see that in Mancini as well, except he's got this other level. And I guess speaking of Rempy, I've really loved his the change in him. How obviously we've all talked about he's gone and worked on, his fighting game, but he's also, the stuff that he's done with Kreider and those guys, that you can see he's got a different, I believe anyway, he's got a different mindset where you can see him coming into this season. I noticed the other night where he was challenged 3 or 4 times, and you could see guys getting in his face and trying to get him to go, and he didn't do it. And I thought he's trying to make a statement that that's not just me anymore, where I'm trying to be more than just the guy who's going to go out and punch on and get 10 minutes in the box or get sent off or whatever it is. He's really trying to do something different, and I really love that. I think that just shows someone who's willing to work and try, to lift and become that, as he said last year, what was it, 10 to 13 minutes he wants a night or something?
Something like that, yeah. I mean, it's interesting to see him, make those changes and add different parts to his game. We know that he can hit and we know he can fight, and certainly, he'll do both of those things this year. But to see him become, like a more well-rounded player, I think a lot of people, like non-Ranger fans, who just say, "Oh, this guy's a goon. Why do you?" Yeah. I think he's going to prove a lot of them wrong. He does have a better all-around game. He's a better skater than people realize, and I don't know. I feel like he will eventually, put the pieces together and be more than just, a typical enforcer. Yeah. I also want to ask you about opening night. Again, we're a week away as we're recording this. Rangers Penguins opening night. Any prediction for that game? Any, you want to throw out, who scores the first goal of the season? Any kind of anything like that?
First goal, I love these. I would say I hope Brett's on the ice. I hope they've just, as you mentioned in the pod, that they've just been precautionary. I'd love to see. I've got this feeling that he's really going to take off this year and continue that form of, shooting more, not just being the elite passer. But I'd love to see him do that. I could see Brett opening up the season with a nice little wrister. The other one probably that I'd throw in there is I really want to see Filipino be successful this year. After everything that he's gone through, and like everyone else, when I saw him on the ice, kneeling on the ice, injured in those practice games, I thought surely not. But thankfully, it was just a one that he could get over fairly quickly. But I'm sort of almost like maybe I want to see him score first when he's at the Garden, and then like the place would just go nuts. It would just go absolutely off its rocker.
I've been saying the same thing. Like, I feel like when he scores that first goal at MSG, that place needs to erupt as if they just won a Game 7 overtime. Like, it's got to be that epic, and they need to be chanting his name when he's back on the bench. He's really gone through it, and you feel for him. And obviously, we keep our fingers crossed that that's in the past. I mean, you never know with concussions, obviously, but hopefully, there's better days ahead for Filipino this season, certainly than last year. And Ryan, if you'd like, we could do like a quick lightning round here, a couple of rapid fire questions to close out today's episode. Are you up for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go.
All right, cool. So first of all, who is your all-time favorite New York Ranger?
Oh, I can't go past Mess.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so then I can ask you this one. Who is your current favorite New York Ranger?
I'm a massive Mika Zibanejad fan.
Yeah, just great all-around player. It's crazy how much people are on him right now. I think he's going to have a big season.
I think he needs to. I think the last year, just apart from that, the power play and that sort of stuff, I really want to see him get a lot more goals 5-on-5.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's gonna be big for the Rangers, and I think he'll pull it off this year. But how about your favorite New York Ranger memory? Just anything you remember about watching this team or anything like that?
Yeah. So, long story short, when I was a little kid, I grew up. I went to live in Canada for a year. I lived in Winnipeg, and getting to my first game was actually seeing the Great One against the Jets. And then being able to, my first time in Madison Square Garden, being able to see his jersey hanging as you do the tour and all that sort of stuff. But then I distinctly remember my first game was Shesty's first game in goal.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah. And so that's a huge highlight. Like it wasn't planned or anything. I think it was against the Devils and they won. One of the gentlemen who was sitting next to me said, "You don't know how special it is that you're here tonight because this kid is going to be something huge," and certainly is.
Yeah. About 5 years later, here emerging as obviously one of the top players in the NHL. That's so cool that you're at that game. Very, very cool. Yeah. How about this? Your favorite person to watch the Rangers with?
Oh, I could cause a family civil war here if I answer it correctly.
I did this on purpose, by the way.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm going to say
you can do more than one. You can do more than one.
I can't do just one. I'll have to say my wife Sam, my son Josh, and my daughter Talia because they're all on the Rangers bandwagon with me, and they've all got their own favorites. So it makes family time awesome. Yeah,
for me, it's also my wife and my daughter. My daughter's only 2, so. She doesn't really get it yet, but she'll watch and get all excited when they score. So that's been a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So who's your favorite sports team other than the Rangers? Like in any other sport at any level, your favorite sports team?
Yeah. So in Australia, we have the AFL football, and my favorite team there is the Western Bulldogs. And it really lines up nicely because their colours are red, white, and blue. And so they're my favorite AFL team. And aside from that, I watch the Knicks and follow their trials and tribulations. So,
yeah, they just pulled off a big trade, if I'm not mistaken. I gotta get more into basketball, but it's tough because basketball and hockey run like so parallel with each other. So if they're both playing, I'm always gonna watch the Rangers. You know how it is. But favorite hockey movie? Do you have one of those?
Oh, yeah. See, I love the Mighty Ducks series. I can't help it. I love the Mighty Ducks series, but then, what's the other one I really like? I'd have to go with the Ducks. It's just fun, and I watch it with the kids as well. So definitely the Ducks.
Yeah, it's just pure 90s watching those Mighty Ducks movies for sure. I don't know if you're a gamer at all, but do you have a favorite hockey video game?
Yeah, what are we playing at the moment? I think I've got 2K23, which I'm playing at the moment. My son and I have some epic battles on that at night times. Absolutely love that one. So especially going into team mode and being able to make your own teams. And we do randoms, but I always end up with the Rangers anyway. So
there you go. Yeah. And watching a game live, in person, would you rather see a hat trick or a line fight?
Oh, I'll take a hat trick any day.
Yeah.
Give me the goals. Because I know that the thing is with our team, we've got enough people who'll fight anyway. So give me the goals.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, it's funny. The last two, I went my whole life without seeing any hat tricks, and then the last two, Mika Zibanejad got one, and then there was a preseason game here in Connecticut, and Filipino got one. So pretty wild stuff. Yeah. But have you seen a hat trick live?
No, never seen a hat trick. Yeah. I've seen overtime game winners and things, but hopefully at the end of this year, when we're back over there, we're seeing a nice little run of games, either at home. I think we see an original 6 with the Boston Bruins, and then we're road tripping down to Washington and then back up to see a couple more. So fingers crossed we get to see a hat trick then.
Yeah, you were telling me about your whole schedule, and that's awesome that you're coming over for, I think, like 3 or 4 games, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah. For sure, Ryan, when you're here, let me know. Maybe I'll stop by. Maybe we'll do like some kind of a Locked On Rangers event. We'll see if we can make that happen. But yeah, man, thanks for joining the show. There's a ton of fun, and best of luck in the fantasy league this year as well.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, John. It's been a big thrill. So really appreciate your time.
Oh, you got it, man. So Ranger fans, thank you as always for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.